Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Ryan, and welcome to Central Park. We're really happy to continue bringing the park to you, not only through in-person programs, but also through our weekly walks, our about 30-minute informal weekly programs held every Wednesday at 12:30, where we take you through various areas of the park, discussing different history, ecology, and really just the importance of Central Park, as well as enjoy the present-day beauty, as all the photos you're going to see on this about 30-minute presentation were taken by myself here in Central Park over the past week or so. And today I have a special little presentation for you. We're going to be taking a weekly walk titled Wildflowers with me, Ryan, on today, August 17th, 2022. And the main purpose of this walk today is going to get you excited for a virtual programming that we're launching tomorrow, Thursday, August 18th at 2 p.m., a 45-minute long in-depth virtual program titled A Walk Through the Wildflowers of Central Park. Talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But as we start up our walk, I want to again thank you for joining us and supporting us at the Central Park Conservancy. We're the nonprofit private organization whose mission is to preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life, enhancing the enjoyment and well-being of all. Now, we do want to thank you again for joining us and encourage you to interact with us as we take a little walk through the park today. If you want to say hello, maybe drop a favorite line of a memory you've shared in Central Park, use the chat feature to say hello. If you do have a question you'd like answered, please use the Q&A feature, and my colleagues Desiree and Jose will be on the back end answering any questions you might have. Last thing you'll see pop up are some visitor polls I'll launch throughout the walk, and once everybody has voted, we'll share the results and see what we're all thinking. You'll also notice we are using live transcripts as always, and you do have the ability to turn those off using the live transcript button or that CC icon on your Zoom toolbar. Now, as we make our way through the park, we're going to take a nice short stroll along the northeastern section of the park as we visit an area that contains a lot of beautiful wildflowers, specifically areas that are titled butterfly gardens. These are a kind of hidden gem that exists within the park that not too many people have really visited before. So we want to tell you a little bit about one of our favorite areas to see pollinators and an area where we can see wildflowers out in the open without having to do too much work. Now, as we begin, we're going to start our adventure over along the east side of the park, over at about 103rd Street, or rather 102nd Street along 5th Avenue. And as we walk into the park, luckily we have some nice blue skies, but also some clouds giving us a little bit of cover, and of course being a lot cooler than the heat wave we've been experiencing the past few weeks, making today a perfect ideal time to come through the park and enjoy some of the lush green, but also some of the wildflowers that we can find scattered throughout Central Park. And as we start to make our way up this little step path lining 5th Avenue, we can immediately start to encounter some of the beautiful flowers we find around. And while these might not be bright and colorful from first glance, they certainly are wildflowers. Wildflowers, by definition, can refer to really any flowering plant, specifically any flowering plant that was not cultivated, intentionally planted, or given human aid, yet it still managed to grow and bloom. And of course, we might think of wildflowers as strictly just being big, bright flowers, but sometimes they're more subtle. And we can see some of these flowers growing along this viney bush or this viney kind of shrub along the gate, just slowly beginning to bloom. As we actually get to this and see this little view, I'd like to launch the first poll, which is the best time to see wildflowers. When is the best time to see wildflowers? I'd love for everybody to vote in this before we discuss the answer to that question a little bit. But as we make our way around the park, we can talk a little bit about some of the different terms we see with wildflowers. Of course, wildflowers is a pretty broad term, and what we might see attached to that are different terms like annuals and perennials. Annuals are going to be plants that complete their life cycles from germination to the production of seeds within one growing season and then often die. Actually, a lot of viney plants, much like the ones we see here, which I'm not exactly sure the species of, so I don't want to misspeak and say the wrong one. Many of these viney plants, like morning glories, which love to grow along fences like this, are annual plants that again will complete their flowering and germination in one season and then seemingly just disappear. We can also see, though, perennials around. Perennials are going to be Perennial plants, or simply a perennial, a plant that lives more than 2 years. These plants flower for a finite period of time and seemingly die or wither away. And then come the future spring season, we see them returning to life once more. Now, whether a plant is a perennial or an annual, all plants are really trying to accomplish the same goal: flower, receive pollination, seed out, germinate, and then have future flowers and offspring grow. Plants certainly have a number of different ways to accomplish this goal. Bright colors can certainly be one of those ways, attracting pollinators that see a broader spectrum of color, especially even birds like hummingbirds, which tend to see a greater UV spectrum, which draw them more to reds, oranges, and yellows in particular. Many of these plants actually having higher nectar contents than some of the other colored plants we see around. But of course, no matter the color and no matter the style of the plant, whether it be more of a bottle brush type of bloom like on our left, or one like a traditional maybe daisy type style like on our right, we can certainly see a lot of beauty and function with these wildflowers that grow throughout the park. As we start making our way through the park, we'll walk a little south on this path and keep our eyes open for some more flowers, specifically wildflowers though, and maybe ones that are a little different than the traditional tulips and daffodils we might normally keep our eyes open for. As we start to make our way down the path though, I will share that poll, and it's looking like a lot of people are voting for spring and summer. Now, this poll that I just shared with you, when is the best time to view wildflowers? There is truly no correct answer for this. So no matter what you vote is correct, even winter, there might not be as many as the spring and summer and fall available. We can still see some popping up during the winter. Or if you go to Bethesda Terrace and look at the Angel of the Waters or Bethesda Terrace, you can see plenty of sandstone carvings and even bronze flowers like lilies in the hand of the Angel of the Waters being held. So flowers can be found around the park in every season. Spring, summer, and fall, though, will be some of the best seasons to see wildflowers. And largely it'll come down to maybe even what colors you want to see, as we see a lot of various yellows coming up in spring, followed by a nice mix of reds, purples, magentas, and eventually ending in fall with a very big last hurrah of a lot of gold and yellow colors, as we see goldenrods being a primary flower coming out during that time. But really, any season you visit the park, you have the opportunity to see beautiful wildflowers. I always personally love coming in the summertime around July to August, but some of our gardeners might recommend visiting the park in the fall. So if you don't have the opportunity to make it to the park this summer, stop by in the fall if you do, and you'll see plenty of beautiful wildflowers blooming on top of course, the very amazing fall foliage that attract a lot of people to the park. As we start making our way down the path, though, again, we can keep our eyes out for wildflowers everywhere. And from far away, we might just see shrubs of green. But as we come a little bit closer, again, we can see a lot of beauty and small, but still immaculate little wildflowers blooming on some of these different types of plants. What we can see here is a snowberry, the flowering shrub that's actually related to honeysuckles. These plants today, they're often used for controlling soil erosion, but a lot of these were brought in originally for ornamental purposes, likely why we would see this finding its way into New York and into Central Park. This is a beautiful little plant though, and it actually happens to be a native one that would normally be found growing throughout Canada and the United States. Often this one being put in floodplains and woodlands, which is why or naturally rather growing in floodplains and woodlands, which is why it's often planted and cultivated for a lot of flooded areas to help reduce erosion. But we see this producing a beautiful fruiting berry, which usually fruits in the winter time, producing a really beautiful white berry, kind of giving it its name again, snowberry. But regardless of the season, it does produce some beautiful flowers on top of the berries, attracting plenty of different wildlife, using the nectar from the flowers during these spring and summer seasons, and then eventually in the fall and winter, supplying a lot of wildlife. We see these plants growing in a lot of areas and being an important food source for deer, bears, and even longhorn sheep. We don't see here in Central Park, unfortunately. But as we continue walking around, passing by Bendine Playground, we'll make our way a little bit towards the west now, keeping our eyes open for more wildflowers and passing by a very open meadow. This, of course, not being a wildflower meadow, but rather being East Meadow, a beautiful little area for picnic or non-team organized sports. Just a little bit of light recreation can be done over here. And as we do walk by East Meadow, taking in the expansive meadow views, we can walk a little further to the west and then head to this path on the left. But as we do walk on that path to the left, we can, of course, notice some things just lining a small hillside to our left. And as we look over, we can see, of course, wildflowers. Even in grassy areas like East Meadow, we can find small little flowers and perennial herbs growing. This is a perennial herb that is found on lawns and grasses all over the world. This little white flower, which we can see up closer here, is a white clover, species of clover. And although it's non-native to the area, originally being from areas of like Europe and Asia, it is a naturalized plant now. Now you might hear that term naturalized. One we typically don't hear too often. We probably usually hear native and invasive. So native plants are going to be plants really that are indigenous to an area. They were here similar as we mentioned wildflowers being native to an area and not really receiving any human intervention in their growth. Invasive species are, of course, species that are not indigenous to an area and tend to grow aggressively, outcompeting a lot of native species, really posing a negative threat to ecology. A naturalized species is a species that is not indigenous to an area, but is hardy enough to really adapt to that area, and it doesn't pose a big threat to native wildlife. A lot of the flowers we actually see around New York City are naturalized species. There's over 2,000 plant species found in New York City, and over half of them are naturalized species, like this clover we can see here. As we walk a little bit beyond the clover, though, we can see some other species, ones that are more native to the area. What we're coming up to is a little interesting patch of plants growing on this small rocky outcropping on the hillside. What we're seeing here are type of species of fleabane. This might be horseweed, otherwise known as butterweed, but I can't be certain. But it is a type of fleabane. It's an annual plant that is native to North America, whose seeds will provide a lot of food to the birds in fall. And coming up close, it kind of almost reminds us of a big bouquet of dandelions. Interesting little plant that we can see here, though. One that does provide a little beauty to our walk through these meadows. And again, a reminder that wildflowers take on all shapes and sizes. And even though some of them might appear like weeds, they're very functional for a lot of wildlife, of course, like pollinators and the bees we saw earlier. As we continue walking beyond these horseweeds, we'll continue a little bit up the path and begin to cross the street. And as we begin to cross the street, we'll notice something a little special to our bottom left. As we cross the street, right near that fire hydrant, we're coming up to one of the first major sites on our walk today, one of 4 butterfly gardens that can be found along the east and northern border of the North Meadow ball fields. These 4 butterfly gardens are really amazing. We'll talk a little bit about how they came to be on our walk, but these different types of flower beds hold various species, such as about 2 or 3 different species of milkweed, which are extremely essential to caterpillars and butterflies at all stages of life. And they, of course, produce a lot of colorful blooms, a lot of fragrant smells, and they support beyond butterflies, moths, other insects, and a lot of bird populations from as early as the spring to as late as the first frost of winter. And of course, a lot of beautiful color can be seen throughout here. What we see here pictured are a lot of different species of phlox. Phlox, P-H-L-O-X. That comes actually from a Latin word for flame, getting that name from, of course, the bright colors that come from this diverse species or from this diverse genus of flowers. A lot of beauty can be seen here, though. These purple coneflowers, sometimes referred to as echinaceas, after their scientific name, Echinacea purpurea, probably saying that a little wrong. They don't speak Latin. Even though these purple coneflowers are on their way out That doesn't mean they still don't have use. They are blooming a lot of times earlier in the mid to late spring and summer. But right now, they're still, again, being a vital food source for a lot of different pollinators. This one right here being a bumblebee, which we can see because you kind of see on the back abdomen or that very back end black part, we have a fuzzy type of backing rather than a smooth blacking or ridged backing, which would help distinguish another bee like the carpenter bee. The little bumblebee here helping to get some leftover nectar from this purple coneflower. And of course, these flowers helping to produce a lot of beautiful sights and a lot of beautiful pollinators. Even the flowers that are, again, kind of coming to the end of their blooms during this season still provide a lot of beauty, like this ironweed, the plant that's actually deer resistant, pest resistant, and disease resistant as well. Does a great job of helping to attract pollinators and birds, and of course, looks really pretty. Produces that beautiful kind of purple magenta flower, and it blooms traditionally a lot of times later in the summer when many species have stopped blooming. But as we come through the garden, of course, there's plenty of flowers like other phlox species that are still bright in bloom and, of course, jam-packed, providing big balls of color and flowers. As we move throughout the park, though, of course, we can get the idea and the sense as to why these are called butterfly gardens. Because, of course, one of the most famous pollinators to visit them are some of the extremely beautiful butterfly species, such as this spice bush swallowtail, arguably one of the most beautiful species you will encounter, and one I'd like to treat you to a little video of. Hopefully works out quite well. We can see this beautiful, very large swallowtail butterfly, just immaculate orange and blue colors on its back. Of course, making good use of these phlox plants. Again, one of the many different types of plants that attract butterflies in here. And I'll play that video once more since it's nice and short. But again, a lot of different species of butterflies we can find that rely on countless of the different plants throughout these gardens to, again, get their nectar and in the process help pollinate these flowers, creating new beautiful blooms for the future. But many different types of insects and pollinators we can see as we make our way through here. As we continue on past this, we can, of course, see another plant, milkweed, one of the several species growing throughout here, starting to actually extend beyond the reach of this small butterfly garden. And I love to see nature kind of taking back and extending beyond its human constructed borders. As we start to make our way up north, we'll visit the other 3 small butterfly gardens that exist just to the north of the North Meadow ball fields. And as we make our way up the path, we can walk along the bridle path, getting little views out to our left as we look over the North Meadow ball fields. Always really nice to, again, get some of these expansive views after we're walking through really crowded areas of the park. And coming up in this northern end, it's like we have the park and the gardens to ourselves. As we make our way up the path, we can see another almost abrupt, sporadic kind of planting of this butterfly garden, which sits in between the bridle path and one of the pedestrian paths right along the northeastern corner of North Meadow. As we make our way over, of course, we can see some of these beautiful, beautiful flowers, these being a type of butterfly weed, actually. As we go through the park and learn about these flowers, I do want to make note, as I mentioned briefly early and forgot to mention again, we do have an amazing wildflower virtual tour, which we're going to be doing tomorrow, August 18th at 2 p.m., as well as August 25th at 11 a.m. And I'm going to be kind of just briefly covering some of the things we're going to talk about on the walk tomorrow, but this walk is largely to get you hopefully excited and attending that walk. And I do want to remind everybody the virtual programs that we do, they again are deeper detailed looks with more pictures and more information at a lot of these different topics. And they're also free to join. I know a lot of people sometimes have trouble logging in and joining them, but as you do join these virtual programs, all you have to do is enter 0 into the box and you can register for free. So we'd love to see you joining some of these future virtual programs we're attending, like tomorrow or August 25th, a walk through the wildflower gardens. You can find links and information to that in the chat box. My colleagues drop that information now if you're interested. But as we make our way through the park, we can enjoy this butterfly bush, AKA summer lilac. Traditionally having a little bit more purple colors as the flowers initially come out or as they mature out a little bit, giving again that lilac name a little bit more of a meaning. But of course, this is a beautiful cultivated ornamental type of species. And this is one that's naturalized. Again, not natively indigenously growing here in New York, but one that was brought over for the ornamental purposes. And also because it's a really, really attractive flower for a lot of pollinators, including butterflies, which has led to it being planted in various areas beyond its native range. But a beautiful flower that, of course, is attracting countless species, much like that spice bush swallowtail we saw before. And other types of wild sunflowers and coneflowers help to fill in this area, creating a nice shelf of different plantings that are available for all of the wildlife that utilize these gardens. As we make our way just up the path a little bit, we can head to the other two small sections of these butterfly gardens. These, again, quaint small plantings pack a lot of punch in a very small area. We would see these gardens, butterfly gardens, being established by the Central Park Conservancy and volunteers back around 2000 in an effort to, of course, bring in more pollinators and more native wildflowers and plants. For home gardeners and horticulturists alike, these provide a wonderful opportunity to study the flora that attracts these winged beauties. And a lot of these plants are, of course, chosen for their viability as a food source and really to host reproduction for a lot of wildlife, like, of course, the favored monarch butterflies that we see around. Many of these nectar producing perennials are in bloom all season long too, which means, again, no matter whether you're coming in the spring, fall, summer, or even sometimes winter, you can usually see something growing in these little patches. And again, jam-packed with a lot of beauty. We can see another type of phlox here, probably maybe a garden phlox. But phlox is a genus of 67 species of perennial annual plants. As we mentioned before, annual plants really just growing within one growing season, completing their whole life cycle. But of course, receiving a lot of natural seeding, leading to more of these plants growing and popping up in various areas. These gardens, again, are very beautiful. And the one on the most northeast corner of the North Meadow ball fields is the largest and most jam-packed with just a lot of beauty. And again, maybe looking from a little farther away, just looks like a bigger patch of green. But as you come closer, you see just explosions of various colors, a full rainbow, a natural rainbow created here with all the different flowers like butterfly weed. Butterfly weed, otherwise known as butterfly milkweed, is a species of milkweed. And unlike most milkweeds, pretty interesting because this specific species does not have a very milky, sappy stem like the other ones do, which give them their name. But as you can guess from its name, butterfly weed, it is a favorite of monarchs and even other pollinators like hummingbirds. We can see countless different beautiful blooms in here though, like a little bit of red from this cardinal flower. Cardinal flower can grow pretty tall, between about 2 to 6 feet. And what's cool about this bright red flower is that usually it remains in bloom from about spring through the fall. So again, adding a little red no matter what season you make it to the park in. And as we make our way around the garden, beyond beautiful colors, we can also get really the impression of what the original landscape was like, a very rocky, hilly one. It's amazing to think that these gardens and a lot of these plants can support themselves on these rocky shelves of bedrock of Manhattan schist. Many of these plants have very, very limited soil depths to spread out in. And of course, they do an amazing job of utilizing what little soil exists here in helping to also prevent erosion from occurring on the low-lying landscapes around here. But as we travel around, it doesn't matter that this is a human-planted garden, because of course, butterfly bush, certainly, as well as all the other plants, are attracting countless different pollinator species here, beyond moths and things like that. Again, a lot of different species of butterflies, like this silver-spotted skipper. Silver-spotted skippers are said to be the most recognizable of the skipper butterflies because of their much larger size than most others. Very much smaller, though, than the spice bush swallowtail we saw before, but still a beautiful little bug that, of course, has that nice long mouth part to drink out nectar from some of these long trumpet-like flowers of the butterfly bush. As we make our way around, though, we can also enjoy some of the other larger growths that exist around here, like those of Joe Pyweed. As we do come up here and actually talk about Joe Pyweed and come to the end of our walk, I do want to launch a last poll, which is just, is there a favorite type of landscape you like to see flowers in? Because I'll talk a little bit about where you can, of course, find flowers in the park. But Joe Pyweed is a very amazing flower that, like the answer to this poll, you can find in all areas of the park. Like wildflowers, Joe Pyweed can be found all throughout the park, whether it be around water bodies, in woodlands, in meadows, and along borders of areas like this, jam-packed into floral arrangements of gardens. You can really find Joe Pyweed existing just about everywhere. It is a plant that can grow extremely large, though. It can grow as tall as 12 feet, certainly blocking out the views of some water bodies and areas, which is why a lot of times it will, in various areas, be trimmed down and reduced a bit. But it's a member of the sunflower family, which is why you can imagine it grows very tall like a large sunflower. But it's a really amazing species that does produce a more purple type of flower during its initial bloom, attracting a lot of wildlife, but also, again, being really good at helping to sustain and create a healthy bed of soil, keep a lot of that limited soil locked in so it doesn't wash away during the storm, as well as, of course, have a nice transition from that purple to this kind of flaky, rusty brown color that'll eventually have its seeds dispersed by any blowing wind that passes by the area. But as we make our way towards the end of our walk, I would like to share that poll result that we have. I'll end that poll and share the results. And we can see, I think a lot of people are voting for Meadows, which Meadows is definitely a favorite of mine, because if you do go to areas like Sheep Meadow, you can find the Nelsinger Lilac Walk that lines that area. A lot of really amazing annual morning glories grow along the fence line of that area, as well as, of course, the various blooming lilacs that exist over there. But I think something is really special about seeing wildflowers along meadows where you get a really expansive view. Something about a really tiny, beautiful flower contrasting with a very tall urban skyscraper, I think just really adds a nice special effect to the park and to the viewing of these flowers and blooms. So as we continue and come to the end of our walk, I wanted to end with this big, beautiful flower, the most big and large flower we would find on our walk today. It is a type of hibiscus, specifically a rosemallow, otherwise known as a swamp rosemallow. This is a cold, hardy, perennial plant that often serves as a host for a lot of different butterfly and moth species in their larval stage, much like how milkweed starts off a monarch butterfly caterpillar's life cycle. We see this large flower, which again is probably about the size of a large orange or grapefruit, just adding a beautiful hue of color, a little bit of a white kind of hint on the outside as it starts to get deeper pink. And these flowers are really pretty because depending what time of the day you view it, it might be a little bit different of a color. These flowers have been compared to a face in the way that they can change throughout the day. Sometimes the colors will almost shift on these, as in maybe the first half of the day or the morning, it might start off as more of a white color with a little bit of a pink hue, and eventually start to pink out throughout the day, almost becoming a deeper red color by the end of the day. So it's really interesting to see how these flowers and blooms vary. And again, beyond just coming in the springtime, summer is an immaculate time to see wildflowers, as well as even in the fall where we get one last hurrah, because much like the formal gardens of the park, there's always wildflowers blooming throughout Central Park. And there's plenty of amazing areas to view them in. Beyond, of course, just the areas we were exploring today, you can also find a beautiful flower meadow just near the ending location, actually just above of this last walking icon, along the 102nd Cross Street Drive, bordering the south edge of the North Woods, an immaculate wildflower meadow that recently was expanded to hold even more varying species. Beyond that, I highly encourage visiting woodlands like the North Woods and Ramble, as well as the Hallett Nature Sanctuary. But my biggest recommendation is going to be to visit the Dean Slope, located down near the southeast edge of Central Park. That's going to be a native wildflower meadow that holds over 50 species of native grasses and wildflowers, and is really just
extremely important for pollinating species, for different types of wasps and other insects, and arguably the most beautiful area in Central Park to view wildflowers. If you want to learn more about wildflowers, please, I urge you to join us and sign up for our wildflower walk that will be kicking off tomorrow, August 18th at 2 p.m., as well as another one Thursday, August 25th at 11 a.m. As a reminder, these virtual programs are free to sign up for. You do just have to enter in 0 to the tab. So again, go sign up for these walks. We'd love to have you there. They're free to sign up for. You do have 2 opportunities, and that's going to be it for these, as they will not be publicly posted. But if you do sign up, even if you can't make it, you will get a recorded link for the program to view at a time of your convenience. We would love to see you at a walk through the wildflowers of Central Park. You can check the chat box now for links about this upcoming program, as well as some information about where you can find the North Meadow Butterfly Garden. Again, check the chat box to find information on that, or feel free to ask a question through the Q&A feature. I will leave this chat room open for a little bit longer in case there are any questions we didn't have the opportunity to get to. But as we come to the end of our tour again, love to see you on some of our virtual programs like our Wildflower Walk tomorrow on August 25th. So please, if you're around, sign up, and I hope to see you tomorrow. But again, from all of us here at the Central Park Conservancy, we're really thankful to have your support, and we want to thank you for joining us today. From all of us here at the Central Park Conservancy, stay safe, be well, and we'll see you soon.